My name is Joel Baker. I run American Giants. What we do is find and restore old 1960s International fiberglass giants. I'm going to walk you through how my team restores a Muffler Man, in this case a Paul Bunyan. Muffler Men were large 20-foot advertising giants that were made in the early 60s by the International Fiberglass Company. These guys were really made to bring attention to your business, so business owners love to buy them, set them up outside, and it would get the family car to pull over on a road trip. This particular Muffler Man was buried in the back of an old campground in Wisconsin that had gone out of business. We're guessing he's around a 1964 model, which would make him kind of one of the early ones made. When I first discovered this guy and got a good look at him, I realized he had fallen over. When they fall forward, they land on their hands, and that had pushed his shoulders out and cracked them. Our guys hold the shoulder in place while another guy will screw small boards all around the crack to hold it in place. And when we're happy with that fit, then we screw it in, and the next step is we go into fiberglass filler. Once the boards are holding the shoulder in place for this particular crack, then we can go on the inside of the giant and we can lay down fresh fiberglass and basically connect that shoulder piece back to the rest of the giant. This Bunyan had a lot of detail in the beard, so we basically take Bondo and fiberglass resin and we put it into all those seams of the beard. Once all the cracks on the giant are fixed and all the holes are patched, it's really the hardest part of the job, and this is sanding. We use orbital sanders to sand the giant, and we go over every square inch of the giant and remove all those layers of paint that had added up over the years. Once all the fiberglass repair has been done, then it's time for the first coat of primer, and we use a filler primer that's thick, and it can seep into all these little pinholes and cracks and fill them as best it can. The primer is sprayed onto the whole giant. Simultaneously, while all this priming is going on, we are also working on the feet. The major thing wrong with this guy was he was missing his feet. And this is very common. We see this a lot when you have a business that has a Muffler Man and then they want to get rid of them. Instead of unbolting the feet, they cut the feet off at the ankles. We have made molds of the correct feet from other giants. We had to make new boots. Then we find a point on the original giant's leg that we can cut, and we basically cut about a foot off of the original leg at a good mating point for the new boot. We get a good lineup on the boot into the original leg, and then we use wood and screws to basically bolt that on and hold it in place. Once we're happy with the position and that the toes are pointed in the right direction and everything looks good, then we're going to go in and we're going to fiberglass the inside of those legs. And then we'll come back and we'll actually prime that area again and make sure it's a perfect fit. And you would never know that this guy has replacement feet. In this case, the buyer also wanted an axe that was an original. We didn't have an original axe, so we again used our molds to make an identical axe to the original axes. Once the axe is put together, then we go ahead and sand it down and prime it. In anything the giants hold, we always drill holes in them. That way, if there are any water leaks, the water can drain. The next step is very tedious, but it's very important, and it's called wet sanding. Instead of using orbital sanders, we will use sandpaper by hand, and we will spray the giant down so it's all wet, and we'll use a very fine grit of sandpaper to go over that second coat of primer. And this is basically getting rid of anything in that primer paint that's you can't even see, but that is sticking up and may make the final paint job look not quite as smooth. Once the wet sanding is complete and everything looks good to us, It's an exciting time because we need to send all of our pieces a few miles away to a paint shop. Once at the paint shop, the painter is going to talk to us about what colors we want for this giant. It's very important that the buyer picks out what colors that they want. We often will recommend that they go with the original colors since we like everything to be original, but it's really up to the buyer and what paint job they want. The first thing the painter will do is to put on the base coats on the shoes, the legs, the shirt, and the head. And these are all solid colors that go on each parts. We always use automotive quality paint to give us a 5 to 7 year life before you see any signs of deterioration. Once the base coats are on the giant, then it's time for the details. And this is when the painter will go to work with an airbrush and do all the fine details of highlighting the hair, adding skin tones. The painter will also take great care in doing the eyes and adding a lot of eye details in the pupils. Once all the airbrush details are complete, then it is time for a clear coat, and this gives it a really nice glossy shine. And this clear coat also protects the giant for the long term from sun and weather and being in the elements. Once the pieces start coming back to the shop fully painted, it's time to really concentrate on the internal structure of the giant. A lot of the buyers want the giant to freestand in heavy, heavy wind. The first thing we do is we do a cardboard cutout of the giant's footprint, and then we take that cardboard cutout to a machine shop and they make us a print of that foot that's made out of a 1/4-inch steel. Then we can weld on 4-inch pipes onto that, and those pipes will go up the leg. Once the pipes reach the waist, we weld in cross bracing that connects to the waist. It's during the process of installing the internal structure that we also bolt the giant together. We do a final fit of the waist and the torso, and we also bolt on the head at this time. A date is agreed on with the buyer of the giant, and before we get there, a slab has been poured at that location. Once the giant is unwrapped on site, it's time to install anything that he needs to hold in his hands. With this Bunyan, he held an axe, so we made sure that all the bolts that the axe were going to slide onto were already in place. So on site, it's pretty easy to just make sure the fit is right and bolt the axe down before he's raised up. At this point, a crane or a lift is brought in to lift the giant from the trailer. We take time at this point to make sure that the giant is orientated properly. We'll have the new buyer come in and look at the giant and make sure they are 100% happy with the way the giant is facing. And when they are good, we gently set the giant down on the slab, and those foot plates that are under his feet, they have tabs in them, and those tabs have holes, and we basically drill through those holes into the slab. Once all the holes have been drilled, we will insert concrete anchor bolts, and once we tighten those bolts up, the bolts expand underneath in the concrete and press against the concrete, therefore locking the giant into place. Once the giant is standing, we like to take a step back and get some pictures and really take the time to appreciate all our hard work in bringing another one of these giants back to life. These giants up to this point have lasted for 50 years, and we really want to give them another 50 years. And now this fully restored Bunyan stands at Cumberland Ridge Forest Products in Elkton, Kentucky.